Hi, my name is Justin Ornduff. I'm the president and founder of DVS Baseball. And I'm joined here today by Dr. Gary Gray, the CEO of Gray Institute. And the Gray Institute is a world-renowned leader in the critical role that function plays in our daily lives. And Gary, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Justin, this is an honor. For me, it's a huge honor because I'm a big baseball nut. But even more important than that, I'm really passionate about keeping kids healthy so they can enjoy the game like I know you have in your professional career, and even I did. So this for me is a really honor and a privilege, and so I appreciate being here.
And likewise, and I think for our baseball audience, it's very important to note that Dr. Gray over here can both pitch from the left side and the right side. And so, on a more serious note, we've been talking about the role that recovery plays in the whole process of development as we all chase the optimal performance. And one thing that's happened, and we talk a lot about the life cycle of a baseball pitcher, but more recently, within the last 5 years, something that started to happen is in the private sector, there's never been more businesses, technology, programs that are really selling and advocating to our young baseball pitchers, all the way up the line to Major League Baseball pitchers, and they're selling performance. But performance has come in the mask of really chasing velocity. I want to come bigger, faster, stronger, to sell you, if you don't throw hard, you're never going to get an opportunity to play at that next level, and you're never going to get an opportunity to really succeed. And that's kind of where we are. But what's happened is there's never been more choices that a parent or player has to choose from. And it's become a very, very confusing marketplace. And as more and more gets placed on these young pitchers' plates, what's happening is their level of function is decreasing over time. And as we can see, at a younger and younger age, these young kids are faced with major injuries and sometimes surgeries. And I think it's very important that we talk to you and we talk about the role that function and recovery plays in a person's development program, and how we can really move forward over the next few years and look at this through a little bit different lens. Okay? And so one of the things that we want to kind of start with is, if I'm a 15-year-old baseball pitcher, let's call myself Johnny, what do I really need to know and understand about function?
Well, I think the first thing you hit it on the nose. There's so many literally businesses out there trying to get a piece of Johnny.
Right.
And most of them have the right passion. Most of them really want to help Johnny. But the problem with that is they're not seeing Johnny as a whole person, and they're not seeing Johnny 10 years from now. They're not seeing Johnny 40 years from now. They're seeing Johnny as an opportunity to grab somebody and to throw their information at Johnny very heavily, as you said, Justin, on the performance side, with very little emphasis on the recovery side. And they're trying to grab Johnny and saying, this is kind of how you do it. And if Johnny doesn't make it, well, then too bad, Johnny didn't make it, And so for every one successful client they have, we find out that there's a lot of clients that got beat up. And as you said, either got injured or found out that the performance literally was going the wrong way and got discouraged. And that's, for me, the reason I'm excited to be able to share with you is that DVS doesn't have that approach. DVS is looking at all of Johnny and really cares about Johnny and literally wants the best for Johnny. And you're looking at science to say, what is the best for Johnny?
Absolutely. I couldn't say it better myself. And one of the things that we've always had a value in, our mission is to make pitchers better, right? And we understand that there's a lot of things that go into making a pitcher better. But what we see now is one of the key missing ingredients of all this is function, and it is recovery. And one of the things we're excited about talking to you about is we kind of see the information that you have provided as, you can walk into a room and you've got the strength and conditioning guys, you got the speed and agility guys, you got the pitching coaches, you got the analysts, the mental skills, nutrition. There's a lot of things that go into this puzzle here, right? But there's kind of a glue, which could be, we could all agree that at the end of the day, we want our pitcher to be functional, to be available, to be healthy, and that's going to allow him to be able to perform
Yep.
at the highest level that he's capable of doing.
Yes.
So as we start talking about this, let's call it missing ingredient of recovery. You know, on a very simplistic level, recovery is a lot more than just, well, I'm just going to go sit on the couch. You know, I'm just going to lay up for a little bit because I want to really rest and I want to make sure I don't tax my muscles any further. But
Right.
there is a whole other thing about the active recovery that we should be going through.
Yes.
But talk about recovery in general. What do muscles do actually when they recover? And let's walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, you hit it right on the nose. We've been fighting this for years. Everybody has their own little specialty. Somehow this guy's going to make me a little quicker, and this guy's going to make me a little stronger, and this person's going to do this, and all of a sudden, and if I'm Johnny, and if I'm Johnny's parent, if I'm Johnny's coach, I want somebody that's looking at everything and becomes the glue. I want what you guys are doing at DVS, looking at everything. And just your emphasis on recovery means, wow, you're way ahead of the ball game. Because so many times it's like, well, just throw an ice pack on your shoulder, go sit on the couch, and we'll call that recovery. And the more we know about the science of performance, the more we're finding out that the science of recovery is even more integral to the development of anything, let alone a pitcher. And so when you look at understanding what we call the biomechanics of recovery, the physiology of recovery, the neurology of recovery and even the psychology of recovery, we realize that the proper recovery allows Johnny during that time to get better. So when he shows up for his next training session or next opportunity to hit the mound, he's improved while he quote unquote rested, as opposed to what we're traditionally seeing. We beat up on the performance end, we don't understand anything about recovery, and then there's a slow fade. And there's a slow fade in performance, and there's a slow fade in resiliency of the body. There's a slow fade in the psychology of what's happening to poor Johnny. And somebody's got to say, well, wait a minute, that's not the approach we're going to take. We're going to emphasize and understand what recovery really is. From a skeletal basis, from a capsular basis, as you said, the muscular basis, from even a neurological basis. What does that mean, and how do we take advantage of this time when Johnny's not training or throwing to make Johnny better? That's really the new game that's out there.
Oh, absolutely, and one of the things that's kind of a hot topic is, you know, in my off-season period, which, you know, we refer to the off-season as this October, November, December. The summer season has ended. Traditionally, the baseball season at Major League level has ended itself. And we can go into a phase of recovery and gaining strength or understanding what I need to focus on based off my previous season. Right? And so that's kind of where all these private businesses are coming into play, and there's a lot to pick and choose from. But by and large, when I start preparing to be successful in my season, which is where I need to perform my skill, there's this whole thing about, can I sustain this level of performance over a long period of time? And what we're starting to see is in that off-season phase, let's go back to Johnny for a moment, is that let's say Johnny, he's getting prepared for his season. And he's been a part of a strength and conditioning program that wants him to lift 4 days a week. And he's got a private pitching coach who's working on his bullpens. But he's also been a part of this velocity program he's been doing to make sure he's throwing hard to get noticed, right? All these things are converging right before the season starts. And as we know, some things got to give and take here. So what is Johnny, what's a parent to do? And what we're finding is they feel like they have to do it all to make sure that they don't lose or miss out on anything. And that's kind of a notion that's stuck in a lot of these players' heads, right? And there's a quote that I found in one of your Fast Function series that I found on YouTube by Dr. David Tiberio. And, you know, I'm not going to know the specific quote, but one thing that really resonated with us was it's about that repetitious activity, that, you know, that circle of function and recovery may become smaller and smaller and smaller because my body's trying to adapt to find this level of mobility in there to where I can still function. You know, so one of the things to kind of wrap up this recovery here is if I'm Johnny again, I have all these things on my plate, how eventually would that kind of lead to a potential issue in my overall development?
Yeah, the great thing about that is if people are watching this, I'd rewind it and listen to that again, because that was, you hit everything just right on the nose. Let's start with kind of the off-season concept. You know, when you're quote unquote off-season, whatever that means, and the sad thing is a lot of times kids aren't allowed to go off-season. You know, we just keep hammering at them. You have to really ask yourself, what am I trying to accomplish here? And the answer is a really easy answer. You want to build a stronger foundation so your peaks of your ability get higher. Just think of a pyramid. If I have a small foundation, my peaks are going to be so high. And that's all I'll achieve, because I'm just throwing, and I'm not creating the foundation of my body, neuromuscular-skeletally to throw. So if I do have this opportunity where I can concentrate on getting my peaks higher, we don't go back to the peak and keep throwing. We got to go back to the foundation. And now the key about the foundation that we've been studying for years is, what should that be? Because I can certainly bench press and get stronger, but will bench press allow me to create a foundation that I'm going to be able to go back out on the mound and be efficient and proficient next year? We now know the answer is no. You know, so what is that? And that's what DVS is providing, is during this foundational period, what all do you need to be doing? And a big chunk of that, as you've already indicated, is recovery. And so there's a science to recovery. So what do I do after I do that particular workout? Do I just let everything shut down? We know that's the worst thing you can do, but that's kind of a natural, intuitive thing for us to do. I just got done, I'm tired, I'm going to shut down. There's a we kind of call it the train analogy. When you see a powerful train, it's pretty impressive. It goes flying by, and you're kind of upset that you have to wait for the train to go by, but you're going, man, that's a lot of mass and momentum flying by there, and you're impressed. But what you didn't see is the gradual warm-up, and what you don't see is the gradual cool-down. And it's all about movement. You don't see the train go 80 miles an hour and then just stop. Okay, it would ruin everything. But that's what we're asking sometimes our kids to do. And the wonderful thing about DVS, and just by you asking the question, is immediately you're going to provide an opportunity for my kid, my Johnny, so to speak, to understand what the foundation should be, what kind of in-season training should look and feel like, and off-season training should look like, with an emphasis on recovery. I really am impressed with a lot of people who are finally getting recovery, not only in the physical realm, but even in the mental and spiritual realm. You know, we just gotta, we were made to get here, and then recovery should get us here. What we've been doing so far is we're getting here, recovery takes us here. We fight it again, recovery takes us here. And you said that right at the start. When we see that not emphasized, we see the kids struggling, we see them not reaching their potential. Literally, we see them doing a poor job. Less control, less sustainability, less endurance, less velocity, you name it, they got it. And the worst thing, all of a sudden, hey, Dad, my elbow hurts. You know, my shoulder hurts. And it's like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
So part of that is improper training, I believe, but a big part of that is not understanding recovery the way DVS understands recovery.
Well, that's great, Gary. We appreciate that. And I'm going to segue for a moment. So as our recovery may become less and less, you know, one of the things that you've also mentioned, that the recovery could impact my ability to maintain a high level of this flexibility and mobility, you know, which you have considered as the cornerstone of a strength or a fitness program, right? We always talk about, oh, I got all this strength, I want to be strong. But, you know, what is it really to be strong in a movement? You know, because the movement that we have as pitchers may look entirely different than the movement of another sport. And we have to always remember what we're asking our body to do from a mound, right? 60 feet, 6 inches away. And what those gravity forces play upon my body, and what do I need to be able to do to replicate that movement, but also maintain its efficiency. And we're going to get into the sequencing part in a moment, but briefly touch on the role if my function starts to go down, you know, the impact it could play on the overall mobility and flexibility within my body, and then how may that start to be diminished in terms of what I can actually do within my pitching delivery.
I'm gonna steal one of your phrases you just said because it's really succinct and brilliant. It's strength for movement. If we could just all understand that, because strength for what? And so if you say, I want strength to hit a golf ball better, that's totally different than strength for throwing a baseball.
Right.
Or that's totally different strength if you and I are going to box. Or that's totally different, I have to have enough strength to sustain the ability to lift boxes in a factory. So our body is this amazing engineering feat, but we got to give it guidance. Strength for what? Now, you said strength for a movement, and it's critical that we understand that the throwing motion is a movement, but it's made up of motions. In other words, the motions occur, as you said, at the joints. And as Dr. Dave Tiberio says, if we continue to beat up that movement and we don't understand what joints are contributing to that movement, the body will gradually protect itself. We're a protective entity. That's what we want to do. We want to survive. So we will protect ourselves by battening down the hatches. So we batten down, batten down, batten down. A great example is in the throwing mechanism. When we look at the biomechanics of throwing, we look at the movement, but we break it down into what motion happens at every joint. And let's just look at the all-important, what we call stance hip. Okay, so when I get and I load and explode, my hip goes through a motion that's called internal rotation, a motion that we call adduction, and a motion that we call flexion. What does that do? Well, that motion turns on the proprioceptors that turns on the muscles to make them efficient. Well, if I don't allow that to recover, if I don't have a strategy for when I come off the mound to regain that mobility, like you properly said, and to basically let the proprioceptors know that, hey, great job, but we're going to even do a better job next time. What happens is that, as Dr. Dave Tiberio said, that slow fade, that accumulative effect will gradually inhibit the motion of my hip. Now, I won't know that. Right. And I will still go to the mound and I will still do the movement, but now instead of the primary motions for the movement coming from my hip and from my feet and from my core, that's been taken away from me because no one knows the science of what that motion is. And so now it's going to come from somewhere else. Well, we already know where it's going to go. It's going to accumulate and go right to the shoulder and go right to the elbow and literally go to other places that it shouldn't go. That gets me, and you already said the sequence, it gets me out of sync.
That's right.
So the brilliance of DVS is saying, let's sit back first of all and understand that throwing is a movement. Everybody throws different based on their body, but their motions occur in the joints. And if we understand what happens in the joints and we understand what kind of mobility to create and how to create strength for that mobility, for that motion to give me a better movement, now I got myself a Gidget. And again, the emphasis is on that. Yeah, I can show you a lot of training and performance things, but I'd even be more intrigued to find out, so what should I do for recovery? So the next time I step out there, my motions are better, more appropriate for that movement, and therefore the movement's better. Lo and behold, I throw the ball better.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I think it's hard for the average pitcher to start to dig in to the biomechanics and start to understand really how the muscles and those motions really occur, right? And because that's often debated.
Right.
And obviously at DVS Baseball, that's been our passion to deliver some objectivity based off those movements that you're currently doing.
Right.
What happens long term to you? Well, we can deliver that information now.
Right.
And also with this movement, we talk, and you said it, and I was talking about it, is sequencing. And, sometimes the fastest route or most sustainable route to long-term performance or even short-term performance is just to have a better sequence.
Oh, amen.
But I don't know if I want to touch that one because, hey, Johnny, come over here. We want you to understand this movement, but it's going to require you to think about it, test out this movement, feel it differently, and you may throw the ball, an errant throw, a little bit.
Sure.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But that's a conversation, that's a communication route that you start to have with that pitcher.
Right.
But it's harder to do.
Right.
And not a lot of performance specialists or coaches really want to have that conversation. But if the pitcher would just understand, look, your job is to be a pitcher. That's your skill set. Throw a strike. Okay, that's your job description. but sometimes just understanding what goes into the skill of delivering a baseball can
Yep.
be your fastest route to performance.
Yep.
But it's often one that's most misunderstood.
Yep.
So, question I have for you is, one thing we've seen from the DVS scale, the higher my DVS score, my higher level of sequence, I'm able to throw more innings without undergoing an injury.
Right.
So in my body, as I'm moving in these movement patterns, let's say I have this better chain reaction, these biomechanics, I'm sequencing up better. How is that actually helping me to stay healthy?
Yeah. A beautifully loaded question. Bad news is I could go forever on this, but I'm just going to pick out the highlights. As I told you when we first met, and I saw your DVS scale, how you assess the pitcher, I hopefully gave you the biggest compliment I could give you, because you emphasize sequencing. You don't emphasize just range of motion. You don't emphasize this. You emphasize when certain things happen. And we know neurologically that's the game. We know that's the game. When we see somebody that really just can throw, and we know that person's going to throw for a long time, and they're going to just gradually get better and more effective and efficient, and their longevity of their career is great. We just see this thing that's beautiful sequencing. We can also see somebody just kind of be big and strong and just raw and just trying to, overcome everything. And we go, boy, if you keep that up, you're not going to get anywhere. It might be impressive now. You might have snot coming out of your nose and snarling, but, it's not going to get it. You said something even more important prior to that. The athletes shouldn't be responsible for figuring out the biomechanics of the sequencing. That's our job, okay? And that's why DVS is so significant to the pitcher, is that we'll help you with that. However, you also have to be willing to train in a way that subconsciously gives you the right sequencing. And for a while, it might, from a skill level, not look exactly what you want. But your foundation is going to get bigger. So sometimes you got to come off the mountaintop, go down in the valley, and work hard. Okay. And when you're in the valley, you don't see what you see from the mountaintop. It's not as a pretty view. But that's where gains are made, where somebody can say, wow, okay, we can enhance the sequencing, and getting your pelvis to release a little sooner to get the sequencing towards the plate better. But here are the 4 drills that I want you to do so it happens subconsciously. But in the meantime, know that you're going to be in the valley for a little bit.
That's right.
But the thing I find with athletes is, if I'm in the valley and you can explain to me why I'm in the valley, I don't mind. But if you somehow take me to the valley and you're not explaining to me that now I get to go to a higher mountaintop, that's when I struggle and I get confused. And so the athlete shouldn't be responsible for doing what we've done, and that's studied this sequencing for 45 years. We should then make it simple for them that you've done at DVS to say, we have this assessment tool, or wow, we can let you know exactly what your sequencing is. We have tools to train you in order to get your sequencing better. And more importantly, we have a recovery program that's going to, even while you think you're just resting and you're taking it easy, it's going to enhance neurologically the sequencing. You can just see that we've seen it our whole life, just that athlete that looks like they're barely even trying, and all of a sudden, I mean, you don't have to watch the LPGA long to realize that I think I could beat her up, but she's out driving me by 80 yards.
That's right.
Okay, so how does that happen?
Right.
It's sequencing.
That's
it's
right.
100% sequencing. And so if you get the right mobility at the right joints to create the right motions for the movement, but more importantly, like you said, and that's why I was so impressed by what you're doing, very few people talk about sequencing. They're all into, trying to make it go faster and, bigger and stronger and all that kind of stuff. And we've seen the results of that.
Right.
More injuries, more surgeries, so we're not getting anywhere. At some point, we got to sit back and go, what are we missing? You're missing 2 major things: proper recovery and proper sequencing. You couldn't say it better.
Well, that's right. And I think as a former professional pitcher, and if I had advice for future professional pitchers who want to try to aspire to the highest level that they're capable of, I think we can all agree that this game that we love and we share this passion for, the longer I get to play it, awesome.
You bet.
Each day it's just a gift,
Yeah.
right? But if I could sit you down at 15 years old and say, hey, take a year, take 6 months, let's dig in for you to really understand what you're doing.
Right.
But for the next 15 years, you're going to be rewarded with the ability to play the game, stay healthy, feel good, maintain a level of confidence, which then breeds success.
Yep.
And success comes in many forms.
Right.
You know, but whether it's fame or notoriety or some accolades or revenue and money.
Yep.
You know, and I think for a lot of these guys that are playing this game, that are beating themselves up to get to that high level of performance, you know, it's kind of cool when you can step back and tell somebody an accomplishment that you did.
Yep.
You know, there's a lot of places I go, but I'm always introduced as Justin Ornduff, the former first-round pick, played for Team USA. But those things just didn't happen
Right.
overnight. You know, that's years of dedication that I put towards, you know, my craft and that accomplishment to pitch and be successful
You got it.
in game.
Yep.
And I think that, you know, as a lasting message, you know, for our listeners, you know, that we want them to understand, we want them to throw hard, we want them to be these big time performers, but you may want to take a step back, evaluate your overall program and say, I've got this, I've got that, what might I be missing?
Right.
And most of the times, and based off our conversation today, we could pretty much conclude that the recovery portion of their program isn't as valued, but man, if it was valued, in addition to some sequencing, that performance, that velocity that they're chasing, it's going to be there.
Yeah, it's you can't say it better than that. I don't want to kind of regurgitate it because you said it so beautifully. But you know, the real question is here: if I'm an athlete, if I'm a parent, if I'm a coach, what should I do? My responsibility as an athlete to get better. My responsibility as a parent is not only get better, but our heart breaks when you get injured. And our responsibility as a coach is to provide this environment where you reach your maximum potential. DVS, at least in my awareness, is the only group that understands what you just said, and that's so critical. To understand that we do many times have to just take a step back, reanalyze what's going on, give you a stronger foundation, and so when you go back, you're going to be a lot more successful. The chance of injury are a lot less, and that's a beautiful thing. Success sometimes is even as when you get old like me, still being able to play catch with your grandkids and saying, man, everything still feels pretty good.
That's right.
But just imagine, and again, this is tough for you, but if you had the DVS knowledge when you were 15, we probably wouldn't be talking right now. We would be, but we'd be interviewing you on a baseball field, you know, after a World Series throw. Because it is that significant. So I applaud you. I really am honored to be able to share a little bit and to help in any way we can. But I don't think there's really a choice out there for people. I want my Johnny to be cared for by somebody like DVS that can really look at the whole picture and is willing to say to Johnny, hey, just for a little bit, we're going to step back, but we're going to create this better foundation for you. But we're going to tell you why, and you're going to see the benefits of it immediately. But we're going to get you so your body recovers, not only physically, but as a parent, I'm interested also mentally and socially and spiritually, that he just continues to love the game. The ultimate goal is that we continue to just love the game. There's just something wonderful about the smell of a glove and the pop of a baseball into a mitt and the ability to just kind of throw that thing and have it go somewhere. I mean, that's it's romantic to me. And those of us who have sensed that realize that, okay, we just want the romance to continue for every athlete.
That's great, Gary, and we really appreciate, you know, you taking the time today. And, you know, we wanted to make sure that, you know, we really put together something here for the young athletes, the young pitchers, the parents, to where they can just, you know, step back and say, okay, you know, that kind of makes a little bit of sense to me. And we've been going through this journey. We're a little confused. There's a lot of people telling us a lot of stuff. And we want to be, you know, at the end of the day, we want to help, we want to provide solutions, but we also want to be a resource because we do have a passion to see everyone succeed. We want to make sure we follow through with that. And if we're not currently involved in what you're doing, and this video kind of helps kind of a spark there, maybe a light bulb moment to where you can say, oh, okay, you know, I really never thought about it like that. Then I think we, you know, mission accomplished.
Right.
You know, so we thanks for taking the time today, Gary, and we really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much.